Hello there. The Soong family are living legends for ill and for good. Depends on the generation really, and what their particular field of research. The Soong family dates back many centuries and seems to have a unusually high number of, let's face it, geniuses in their respective fields within the family, as well as some pretty eccentric naming conventions within the family as well. Today, we're going back in time to the 21st century to meet the earliest known member of the Soong family we know of to date in our historical research, and that would be Adam Soong, the head of Soong Dynamics, a genius geneticist and fairly successful businessman and scientist. He was, as far as we can tell, the first of his generation to be these super geniuses amongst the Soongs. We don't know if there were anyone further back that also did some impressive things, but we definitely know that Adam Soong was a genius. So what do we know about Adam Soong? He was born some point in the 20th century. He was obsessed with genetics and improving the human species and condition. Now we know that he probably did have some kind of involvement in the research and work that was done in the eugenics wars. He clearly knew about that. Now we also know that the kind of research he was trying to do, because of individuals of the superhumans like Khan being one of the more famous ones, because of their antics, research into genetic augmentation and genetic engineering was banned on Earth in order to prevent the rise of more superhumans that would try to take over the world. Not just Khan, but any of them. Khan's just the most famous. There were thousands of those people and they were very dangerous and they killed millions of people. So that kind of work, clearly for good reason, was stopped. Soong, however, thought that this ban was ludicrous. It was insane to deny humanity a life-saving, race-changing technology. Yes, the augments like Khan were a failure objectively because their ego outstripped their humanity. Yes, they were physically impressive. Yes, they were highly intelligent. They were a new species of human that was better, stronger, and more intelligent, at least better in a physical sense, but in a social and cultural they were worse. They represented some of the most destructive and violent elements of humanity, and quite frankly, the superego that came with it was a little unjustified considering they were a bunch of failures. But I digress. Soong shared the opinion that yes, with those failures, they were objectively a failure, but we can improve on that. He began extensive research creating genetically augmented, genetically engineered daughters, as he called them, daughters like Persephone Soong. Most of these, literally over a dozen attempts, died within minutes of birth. Others lived for weeks and a few lived for years, reaching the age of about 4 before they would pass away. Despite the fact that he kept losing these children, Soong kept on with his research, producing more and more and more until eventually he created Core. Now Core is going to get her own dedicated video, but in brief, she was the one who was a success story. But biologically, she was a vampire, basically. Aside from drinking of blood, she couldn't go out in sunlight. She needed special shielding to protect herself from the harmful rays in the sun, which would literally burn her up and kill her if she was exposed to them for too long. This was a genetic condition caused as a result of the genetic modifications that her body underwent. He saw her as the next phase of human evolution, but she had her flaws. But unlike the others, she hadn't died, so he raised her as his own daughter. Now, he would learn of his destiny in the future from a powerful, omnipotent being known as Q. Around this time, Soong had had his funding revoked and he'd been laughed out of the scientific community when people had found out about his theories and the experiments he'd been performing, illegal experiments to create genetically engineered people. This, again, was very, very wrong. No one was allowed to do this. The kind of research he was doing was banned for a good reason. So he was basically thrown out, not allowed to conduct research, not allowed to publish papers. His funding was cut, and he was going to be disgraced. Q told him, I've got a cure for your daughter if you help me with a little problem. By extension, the Borg Queen, he got to meet all the big players in this one, told him more information. She told him that he would die alone, he would die forgotten and unaccomplished in the current timeline. However, there was a ship out there called the CSS La Serena, which comes from an alternate, divergent timeline where he is considered the savior of humanity, and he helps build the future. He would have statues in his honor, his name would be heralded. This, to the ego of a man whose ego easily equaled that of any genetically engineered augmented human from the eugenics wars, was music to his ears, and that's exactly what he wanted. He agreed to help them. For Q, he would try to sabotage the Europa launch. He'd try to make sure that Rene Picard never got on that ship, because he would learn that if she went, she would make discoveries that would revolutionize science and would make his work completely obsolete. But if she never made those discoveries, he would go on to this great future, this great destiny. But unfortunately, humanity would also become the Confederacy of Earth, and several species like the Cardassians would be obliterated, the Borg would be obliterated. Well, no one's going to miss the Borg, but the Borg would be obliterated. Various other races, the Klingons, the Romulans, the Vulcans, the Andorians, the Bajorans, all of them are going to be conquered under the militant jackboots of humanity by the 24th century. You know, swings and roundabouts, but he gets to be famous. Now, others from the future, Starfleet officers, do try to sort of dissuade him from this. They fail. His daughter, Kor, again, we'll do her story separately. She kind of abandons him. She gets the cure, yes. The cure fails, relapses because Q's a dick, but gives him the proper version. She gets the proper cure, but she leaves her father. He does love her, I think, in his own way, but his own way was still that of a controlling psychopath. I don't know, to be honest, if Kor goes on to be the genetic ancestor of the rest of the Soong family. It does seem to make a certain degree of sense, or if he had any biological children that would have passed on his name and legacy. It's not exactly certain. Soong, of course, would be thwarted, despite the efforts to sabotage the Europa mission, despite his efforts to undermine and prevent the destiny of humanity to become the Federation instead of the Confederacy, where he will be heralded. He would fail, and he would be forgotten in history, a footnote in a lineage of great men and women that would make up the Soong family. And quite frankly, for the greater good, it was a good thing that this happened. Bottom line, he was a genius geneticist, but his science was misguided. What he wanted to do was not a good idea, and it's a good thing that it was stopped. However, he was a genius, just like all the members of the Soong family seem to be. He would die forgotten and alone, but his family would go on to do very great things, ultimately leading to the birth of an entire new civilization, which we will get to in a later episode. This, we are going to cover all the members of the Soong family, and this was Adam Soong, the first that we know of, but by no means the last. I'd just like to say a thank you to everyone for watching that video. I hope you enjoyed it. I really enjoy making these. If you did enjoy it, please consider giving a like, share and a subscribe, and maybe checking out the other videos on the screen right now, and in the description box below there are links to my other social media accounts.